Ambassador Keller leaned forward, her expression a perfect blend of diplomatic politeness and, "Are you fucking kidding me?" that only 20 years in the Terran diplomatic corps could cultivate. The Parvian delegate, all 7 feet of scaly purple magnificence, shifted uncomfortably. The translator device at his throat blinked rapidly as he spoke. "To clarify, Ambassador, the Galactic Council merely suggests that humanity consider the Drekmar demands. Their blockade of your colony on Proxima Centauri has already caused considerable economic damage, and their threats to—" "Let me stop you right there." Keller held up a hand. "You're telling me that the Council, the supposed guardians of galactic peace, wants us to bow to pirates who've taken our colony hostage?" "The Drekmar Collective prefers the term freedom fighters," the Parvian corrected delicately. "Yeah, and I prefer the term completely fucked in the head for anyone who thinks kidnapping civilians is a path to freedom," Keller shot back. "But here we are." The Parvian's scales rippled in what the human delegation had learned was their equivalent of a wince. Beside Keller, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Dover suppressed a smirk. The military attaché had been against diplomatic solutions from the start, but protocol demanded his silence during these proceedings. The third human in the room, Dr. Eliza Barnes, cleared her throat. The xenoanthropologist had been studying the Drekmar for the last 5 years, which was precisely 4 years and 11 months longer than they'd been a pain in humanity's collective ass. "Ambassador Keller, if I may," she said. "The Drekmar culture places significant importance on displays of strength. Their society interprets negotiation as weakness unless it comes from a position of demonstrated power." "So what you're saying is we should blow up one of their ships to show we're serious about talking?" Dover perked up, suddenly interested in the conversation. "That's not at all what I'm saying," Barnes clarified with an eye roll that could have qualified for the Olympics. "I'm saying they're testing us. They want to see if humans fold under pressure." The Parvian delegate's translator light blinked frantically. "The Council strongly advises against any military action. The Drekmar possess weaponry that could—" "That could what?" Keller interrupted. "Harm us? More than they already have by taking our people hostage?" She leaned back in her chair, the synthwood creaking slightly under the shift in weight. "Tell me, has any species ever successfully negotiated with the Drekmar by giving them what they want?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "That's what I thought," Keller said, standing up. "Please inform the Council that Earth will be handling this situation according to our own protocols." "And what protocols would those be?" the Parvian asked, his voice carrying an edge of genuine curiosity. Dover grinned. "We don't negotiate with terrorists." Admiral Helena Wells stared at the holographic display of the Proxima Centauri system, her steel-gray eyes tracking the positions of both human and Drekmar vessels. "Run it by me again," she said to the room of officers crowded around the tactical table on the bridge of the TDF Indomitable. "How many hostages?" Colonel Dmitry Volkov, head of Special Operations, stepped forward. A man of few words and even fewer facial expressions, his permanent scowl had terrified recruits for nearly 2 decades. 5,342 civilians in the New Seattle colony. The Drekmar have disabled the planetary defense grid and have 7 warships in orbit. Their ground forces have occupied the main administrative center. Standard hostage protocol. "Standard for them, maybe," Wells muttered. "Options?" Lieutenant Raj Kapoor, the ship's tactical officer, highlighted several points on the display. "We've got the Drekmar fleet here, here, and here. Their command ship is holding position directly above the colony. Our intelligence suggests that's where they're keeping the colony's governor and administrative staff." "The Council is urging restraint," Communications Officer Olivia Wu added, her fingers dancing over her console as another message came in. "They're worried about escalation." "I bet they are," Wells said dryly. "Since when has the Council ever gotten its collective tentacles dirty when there's a problem? No, they'd rather humanity just roll over and show our soft underbelly." "To be fair," said Dr. Nathaniel West, the fleet's xenopsychologist, "most Council species evolved as prey animals. Their instinct is to avoid conflict at all costs. While we evolved as persistent hunters who chased our food until it collapsed from exhaustion." Wells completed the thought. "Yes, Doctor, we've all attended your lectures." West had the good grace to look embarrassed. "The Drekmar, on the other hand," Wells continued, "evolved from pack predators, which means they respect strength and exploit weakness." She zoomed in on the colony. "So we'll show them strength." "The Ghost Protocol?" Volkov asked, the faintest hint of eagerness slipping through his professional demeanor. Wells nodded. "The Ghost Protocol." A ripple of anticipation moved through the bridge officers. The Ghost Protocol had never been used in actual combat. It had been deemed too aggressive, too risky, too human. The Council had specifically requested Earth not develop such tactics, which naturally meant that humanity had perfected them in secret. What about Ambassador Keller's diplomatic team? Wu asked. They're still engaged with the Council. Perfect. Wells smiled, the expression not reaching her eyes. Let them keep the Council distracted. By the time the bureaucrats finish their first round of debates, we'll have our people back. Kapoor looked concerned. Admiral, the Council has forbidden military action without their approval. Did they now? Wells raised an eyebrow. Funny. I don't recall Earth surrendering its sovereignty when we joined the galactic community. Last I checked, protecting our citizens was still our right and responsibility. The Council will be furious, Wu warned. Let them be, Wells replied, straightening her uniform. They invited us to join their little club because our technological advancement was impressive for such a young species. They wanted our innovation, but not our independence. Well, they're about to get a demonstration of both. She turned to Volkov. How long until your team is ready? The colonel checked his tactical pad. 2 hours. Make it 1. I want this resolved before the Council even realizes we've taken action. Wells dismissed the group with a nod. And someone get me a coffee. It's going to be a long night. As the officers dispersed to their stations, Dr. West lingered. Something on your mind, Doctor? Wells asked without looking up from the display. Admiral, have you considered what message this sends to the galactic community? The Council sees humans as unpredictable. Dangerous, even. Good, Wells said simply. Good? West repeated, puzzled. Wells finally looked up, fixing the doctor with a penetrating stare. For a xenopsychologist, you sometimes miss the obvious. Every predator in nature knows not to attack something unpredictable. It's too risky. By acting decisively now, we'll save lives in the future. Species will think twice before targeting humans again. And if they don't, Wells's smile was sharp enough to cut diamond. Then we'll remind them, again and again, until the lesson sticks. Aboard the Drekmar command vessel Inevitable Victory, Supreme Commander Grask was growing impatient. The humans were taking too long to respond to his demands. Status of the human diplomatic vessel? He barked at his second-in-command. Sub-Commander Trell consulted her console. Still docked at the Council Station, Supreme Commander. No movement in the last 6 hours. Grask's red eyes narrowed, the membranes closing sideways in a gesture of suspicion. And the human military vessels? The human flagship remains at the edge of the system. They've made no moves toward Proxima Centauri. Grask paced the command deck, his clawed feet clicking against the metal floor. Unlike most Drekmar ships with their utilitarian designs, the Inevitable Victory featured trophies from conquered enemies mounted on the walls, a visual reminder of Drekmar's superiority. They should have capitulated by now, he growled. The humans are supposed to be soft-hearted toward their young. We have their offspring. Trell shifted uncomfortably. Intelligence reports suggest humans are unpredictable when their young are threatened. Bah! Grask waved a clawed hand dismissively. Council propaganda to make the humans seem more fearsome than they are. They're barely out of their gravity well. What do they know of galactic warfare? The ship's tactical officer, a grizzled veteran named Drax, looked up from his station. Supreme Commander, may I remind you that human history is filled with conflict. They fought 3 global wars before achieving space travel. Fighting among themselves proves nothing, Grask snapped. Many species destroy themselves before reaching the stars. Yes, but most species exhaust their appetite for violence in the process, Drax pressed. Humans seem to have compartmentalized it. Grask was about to reprimand the officer for his insolence when the communications console chimed. Incoming transmission from the human colony, announced the communications officer. Grask straightened, adjusting his ceremonial armor. On screen. The large view screen flickered to life, showing the face of Governor Richard Winters, one of the hostages. The human looked remarkably composed for someone in his position. Supreme Commander Grask, Winters began, his voice steady. I've been authorized to deliver Earth's response to your demands. Grask flared his throat sac in pleasure, a gesture completely lost on the human. I'm pleased to see reason has prevailed. Your surrender terms are acceptable? A faint smile crossed Winters' face. Not exactly. I've been asked to deliver a message. Earth doesn't negotiate with terrorists. Silence fell over the command deck as the Drekmar processed this unexpected response. Grask recovered quickly, his voice rising to a roar. You dare! Your colony is at our mercy. Your council allies have abandoned you. What possible advantage do you think you have? Winter's smile didn't waver. We're human. The transmission cut off. Grask turned to his tactical officer, rage evident in every twitching scale. Prepare a demonstration. Target one of the outlying habitats. Nothing vital, but enough to show them we're serious. Supreme Commander, the sensor operator interrupted. I'm detecting an energy surge from the colony's main power facility. What? Grask whirled around. That's impossible. We disabled their power grid. Apparently not completely, sir. Suddenly, the lights throughout the ship flickered. Consoles began shutting down one by one. Report! Grask demanded as emergency lighting bathed the command deck in an eerie red glow. We're losing systems across the ship, Trell announced, her claws flying over her console. Some kind of invasive code is... The main screen flickered to life again, but this time it showed a different human. A female with dark skin and a military uniform adorned with insignia Grask didn't recognize. Attention Drekmar vessel, she said, her voice chillingly calm. This is Colonel Mia Drake of Terran's Special Forces. Your ship's systems are now under our control. Your weapons are offline. Your engines are offline. Your life support... She paused. Is currently operational, but that can change at my discretion. Grask snarled. How did you get aboard my ship? Drake's expression didn't change. We didn't, at least not physically. You see, when you connected to our colony's communications network to speak with the governor, you opened a door. We walked right through it. Impossible, Trell whispered. Our cybersecurity is excellent by galactic standards, Drake interrupted. Unfortunately for you, Earth has been engaged in digital warfare since before we reached the stars. It's something of a specialty for us. Grask felt a cold dread settling in his stomach, a sensation he hadn't experienced since his own days as a youngling. What do you want? That's simple. Release our people. All of them. Unharmed. And if I refuse? Drake's expression hardened. Then I start venting atmosphere from non-essential areas of your ship. I'll keep the command deck pressurized until last, so you can watch your crew die. After that, we'll move on to your other 6 ships in orbit. They've already been compromised as well. To demonstrate her point, the lights on the command deck flickered again. You're bluffing, Grask said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. Am I? Drake replied. Let's find out. I'm going to decompress cargo bay 3 in 30 seconds. It should be empty of personnel according to your ship's own logs, so no one will get hurt. Consider it a demonstration. Drax frantically checked his console. Supreme Commander, Cargo Bay 3 is beginning its decompression sequence. I can't override it. Grask stood frozen, his mind racing through options that seemed to evaporate with each passing second. 20 seconds, Drake continued casually as if discussing the weather. Oh, and I should mention, we've also taken control of your internal communications. Your other ships can't hear your warnings. They're currently receiving a looped all-clear signal from your command codes. Stop! Grask finally said. We will release the hostages. Drake nodded. Wise decision. You have 1 hour to evacuate all your ground forces. Any Drekmar remaining in the colony after that time will be considered to have surrendered to human authority. And my ships? Will be allowed to leave the system unharmed once all hostages are confirmed safe. Drake's eyes narrowed. But let me be perfectly clear. If you ever threaten human lives again, what happens today will seem like a friendly greeting compared to our response. The screen went blank. Trell looked at her commander. Your orders, Supreme Commander? Grask's throat sac deflated in defeat. Begin evacuation of our ground forces. And... He hesitated, his pride warring with his instinct for survival. Send word to the collective. The humans are not to be underestimated. 3 days later, Ambassador Keller sat across from the Parvian delegate once again, this time in a private meeting room aboard the council station. The council is most displeased, the Parvian began without preamble. Military action was explicitly forbidden. Keller took a sip from her coffee mug, emblazoned with the Terran Defense Force logo. Interesting. I don't recall any military action taking place. Your special forces never set foot on any Drekmar vessel, Keller interrupted smoothly. If you check the official report, you'll find that the Drekmar experienced a series of catastrophic system failures that they chose to attribute to human intervention. There's no evidence to support their claim. The Parvian's scales rippled in agitation. Ambassador, please, we both know what happened. Do we? Keller set down her mug. What we know is that the Drekmar took human hostages. The Council suggested we capitulate to their demands, and instead the situation resolved itself without bloodshed. I'd call that a diplomatic victory. The Drekmar Collective has filed a formal complaint alleging cyber warfare, a violation of Council Directive 1472. They're welcome to present their evidence at the hearing, Keller replied. Though I'm curious why the Council seems more concerned about unproven allegations of hacking than about the very real and documented hostage-taking of our civilians. The Parvian at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. The Council has also issued a formal reprimand to the Drekmar. A reprimand, Keller repeated flatly. How terrifying for them. I'm sure they're reconsidering their life choices as we speak. Ambassador, let me be clear. Keller leaned forward. Earth joined the Council in good faith, believing it represented a community of species committed to justice and peace. Instead, we found a bureaucracy that appeases aggressors and punishes those who defend themselves. That is not a fair assessment, isn't it? The Drekmar have a documented history of similar actions against other Council races. They've faced no significant consequences, which is why they felt emboldened to target humans. The pattern is clear. The Parvian's scales settled into a pattern that Dr. Barnes had identified as resignation. What would you have the Council do, Ambassador? The Collective controls key trade routes. Their cooperation is necessary for galactic stability. So the Council tolerates their behavior out of convenience, Keller concluded. Thank you for clarifying the situation. That's not what Earth will continue to participate in Council affairs, Keller continued as if the Parvian hadn't spoken. We value the cultural exchange and trade opportunities. But let me be absolutely clear about one thing. The defense of human lives is non-negotiable. We will not outsource our security to a committee that values political expediency over justice. The Parvian was silent for a long moment. The Council fears humanity, he finally said, his voice softer. You must understand this. Your species developed faster than light travel barely 50 years after discovering atomic energy. Your technological progression is unprecedented. Being feared isn't our goal, Keller replied. But if fear is what keeps our people safe while the Council learns that humans are worthy allies, then so be it. And if the Council were to impose sanctions on Earth for this incident? Keller smiled, the expression not reaching her eyes. Then Earth would regretfully reconsider the benefits of Council membership altogether. I believe several non-Council worlds have already expressed interest in direct alliances with us. The Pharaoni, for instance, were quite impressed by our handling of the Drekmar situation. The Parvian's scales paled to a lighter purple. Alarm, according to Barnes' cultural briefings. The Pharaoni, a highly advanced but isolationist species, had rejected Council membership centuries ago. They rarely engaged with other races, yet they'd reached out to humanity? I will convey your position to the Council, the Parvian said carefully. Please do. Keller stood, signaling the end of the meeting. And while you're at it, you might suggest they review the historical records of human conflict. We've fought wars against overwhelming odds for principles we believe in. Council membership is valuable to us, but not at the cost of our sovereignty or our people's safety. As the Parvian delegate left, Lieutenant Commander Dover entered the room. How did it go? He asked, dropping into the chair the delegate had vacated. About as expected. They're unhappy but unwilling to do anything substantive about it. Keller picked up her coffee mug again, grimacing at the now cold liquid. Admiral Wells just sent word. The Drekmar Collective has issued a formal directive to all their captains to avoid human settlements and vessels. Fancy that, Keller said with a satisfied smile. Turns out they can learn after all. Dover chuckled. The Admiral also mentioned that 3 other species who've had problems with Drekmar raids have requested technical assistance from Earth. Apparently, our cybersecurity measures are suddenly in high demand. The Council won't like that. Probably not, Dover agreed. But they'll like the alternative even less. Keller raised an eyebrow. Which is? Having Earth start handling everyone's Drekmar problems directly. Dover grinned. I think they've realized that humans don't do things by half measures. If the Council won't protect its members, Earth will offer alternatives. Speaking of alternatives, Keller said, checking her communications device. The Pharaoni ambassador has requested a private meeting. No Council observers. Dover whistled low. That's unprecedented. The Pharaoni haven't engaged in bilateral talks with anyone in decades. Apparently they've been watching us closely since we joined the galactic community. They're interested in our approach to interstellar relations. Our approach? You mean our stubborn refusal to let bullies push us around? Keller smiled. I believe they use the phrase refreshing directness in a council environment characterized by prevarication and appeasement. I like these Ferroni already, Dover said with a laugh. Keller's expression grew more serious. The council was right about one thing, though. Earth is dangerous, not because we want to be, but because we have to be. In a galaxy where predators are allowed to hunt with impunity, the only safety is in being the apex predator. Or being allied with one, Dover added. Exactly. Keller stood up. Come on. We have a meeting with a potentially very important new friend. 6 months later, Admiral Wells stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Terran defense station orbiting Proxima Centauri. The colony of New Seattle was visible on the planet below, its lights twinkling against the darkness of the night side. Beautiful, isn't it? Said a voice behind her. Wells turned to see Governor Winters approaching, looking much recovered from his ordeal as a Drekmar hostage. It is, she agreed. Worth protecting. The new defense grid is impressive, Winters commented, joining her at the viewport. The Ferroni technology integrated seamlessly with ours. Better than seamlessly, Wells corrected. Their quantum entanglement communications can't be hacked or intercepted. If the Drekmar ever get ideas about returning, they'll find a very different reception. I don't think they'll be back, Winters said. Not after what happened to that pirate fleet that tried to hit the Ferroni mining operation in the Cygnus sector last month. Wells smiled slightly. Yes, that was unfortunate for them. Who would have guessed that the Ferroni had been sitting on advanced weapons technology all this time, just waiting for a reliable ally before deploying it? Reliable ally, Winters repeated. Funny how that term means different things to different species. To the Council, it means someone who follows their directives without question. And to the Ferroni? To the Ferroni, it means someone who keeps their word and stands by their principles, even when it's difficult. Winters gazed out at the colony below. They've been observing council politics for centuries, watching supposed allies abandon each other when the situation got tough. They were waiting for someone different. Wells nodded thoughtfully. The council still thinks we're dangerous. We are dangerous, Winters replied simply, just not in the way they fear. We're dangerous to the status quo. Dangerous to the idea that might makes right in the galaxy. Dangerous to bullies and pirates and anyone who thinks that taking hostages is an acceptable negotiating tactic. A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched the slow rotation of the planet below. 4 more species have requested to join our mutual defense pact, Wells finally said. Non-council races who've been victims of Drekmar raids for decades with no recourse. And the council? Officially? They've expressed concern about parallel security structures undermining council authority. Wells couldn't keep the sarcasm from her voice. Unofficially, 3 council representatives have approached Ambassador Keller about the possibility of their worlds joining our alliance while maintaining their council membership. Winters laughed. They want it both ways. Don't we all? Wells replied with a shrug. The difference is, humanity has actually made it work. We're still council members in good standing, despite their grumbling. Meanwhile, our mutual defense pact with the Ferroni and others has created the first real security alternative in galactic politics for centuries. And the Drekmar? Wells' expression hardened. They've pulled back to their core systems. The collective's leadership is apparently facing some internal challenges now that their raiding strategy has been compromised. Couldn't happen to nicer folks, Winters said dryly. A young officer approached, saluting crisply. Admiral, Ambassador Keller's shuttle has docked. She's requesting your presence in the conference room. Wells nodded. Tell her I'll be right there. As the officer left, she turned back to Winters. Duty calls. It always does, Winters agreed. By the way, is it true what I heard? That the Council is considering adopting our non-negotiation policy regarding hostage situations? Wells smiled. They're studying the ethical and practical implications of a more assertive posture in response to coercive tactics. So yes, but with more words. Exactly. Wells straightened her uniform. Change comes slowly to a body as old as the Council, but it does come. Sometimes it just needs a push. Or a demonstration, Winters added. Indeed. Wells took one last look at the colony below. Humanity has always learned its most important lessons the hard way. Perhaps that's true for the galactic community as well. And what lesson would that be, Admiral? Wells' expression was both fierce and proud. That some lines should never be crossed, that some principles are worth fighting for, and that if you threaten what humans hold dear, We don't negotiate, we respond. The Council Grand Chamber fell silent as Ambassador Keller approached the podium. 6 months of diplomatic wrangling had led to this moment, the formal presentation of the Terran Security Doctrine to the assembled representatives of over 200 spacefaring civilizations. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, a massive dome with seating arranged in concentric circles around a central speaking area. Light filtered in through crystalline panels above, creating a star-like pattern on the floor, a reminder of the vastness that united them all. Keller took a moment to survey the audience. The Parvian delegate was there, along with representatives from dozens of species humans had never even met. In a special observation section sat the Ferroni ambassador, a rare public appearance that had caused quite a stir among the council races. "Distinguished representatives," Keller began, her voice calm but carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "I come before you today not to apologize, as some have demanded, but to clarify. Earth's response to the Proxima Centauri hostage crisis has been characterized as reckless, aggressive, and destabilizing to galactic peace. I am here to respectfully disagree." A murmur ran through the chamber, quickly silenced by the council leader, an ancient Moravian whose species had been among the founders of the council millennia ago. "For too long," Keller continued, "this body has confused peace with the mere absence of open conflict. True peace is not the suppression of disagreement or the appeasement of aggressors. True peace is built on justice, on mutual respect, and on the understanding that certain actions will not be tolerated by the community of civilized beings." She paused, making eye contact with several key representatives. "The Drekmar Collective chose to take innocent civilians hostage to extract concessions. This body's response was to suggest capitulation for the sake of expediency. Earth chose a different path. A path that ended the crisis without bloodshed while sending a clear message that such tactics will never succeed against human worlds." The Drekmar representative, seated far from the center of the chamber reflecting their diminished status, shifted uncomfortably. "Some have asked why Earth didn't follow established council protocols. The answer is simple. Those protocols have repeatedly failed to protect the victims of such aggression. The records are clear. In the last 50 standard years, there have been 17 similar hostage situations involving Council worlds. In 15 of those cases, the affected worlds paid ransoms or made territorial concessions. In all 15 cases, those same worlds faced repeated aggression afterward." Keller activated a holographic display above the podium, showing statistics that couldn't be denied. "Earth does not claim moral superiority," she continued. "Our own history is filled with conflict, with mistakes, and with hard lessons learned at great cost. Perhaps that is why we recognize patterns that others might miss. Perhaps that is why we refuse to reward behaviors that we know will only lead to further suffering." The council leader leaned forward. "Ambassador Keller, while your passion is noted, the fact remains that Earth took unilateral action in a matter that affected council security policy. Such independence cannot be—" "Forgive me, honored leader," Keller interrupted, causing another ripple of shock through the chamber. Interrupting the council leader was simply not done. "But Earth did not cede its sovereignty when joining the Council. The defense of our citizens remains our right and responsibility. We joined this body as equals, not as subjects." Before the leader could respond, Keller continued. "However, Earth recognizes the value of cooperation and consensus. That is why I am here today to present the Terran Security Doctrine, a framework that we believe can strengthen the Council while respecting the rights of all member worlds." The holographic display changed, showing a new set of principles and protocols. "The core of this doctrine is simple. We do not negotiate with those who use terror as a weapon. We do not reward hostage-taking, planetary blockades, or threats against civilian populations. Instead, we propose a united response. Immediate sanctions against aggressor parties, coordinated military deterrence, and a clear escalation pathway that leaves no doubt about the consequences of such actions." Keller gestured to a specific section of the display. "Importantly, this doctrine includes robust protections against abuse. No member world can invoke these protocols without evidence verified by independent observers. Military action remains a last resort, to be used only when all other options have been exhausted." The chamber had grown surprisingly quiet, with representatives leaning forward to study the displayed information. "Some will say this approach is too aggressive," Keller acknowledged. "To them, I ask, is it aggressive to clearly state boundaries? Is it aggressive to protect the innocent, Or is it perhaps more aggressive to allow predators to believe that the galactic community is their hunting ground? The Ferroni ambassador stood suddenly, an unprecedented action in council proceedings. All eyes turned to the tall, slender figure with skin that seemed to shimmer like mother of pearl. "The Ferroni ascendancy wishes to speak," announced the council leader, too surprised to object to the breach in protocol. "For 3,000 years we have observed this council," the Ferroni ambassador said, his melodic voice carrying a subtle harmonics that human ears could barely detect. "For 3,000 years we have declined membership, finding your policies lacking." Another shockwave of murmurs swept the chamber. "The humans speak truth," the Ferroni continued. "Peace through appeasement is no peace at all. It is merely submission dressed in diplomatic language. The Terran security doctrine offers a new path, one that the Ferroni ascendancy is prepared to support." The council leader's appendages trembled slightly. "Ambassador, are you suggesting that the Ferroni would consider council membership if this doctrine were adopted?" "I am stating it directly," the Ferroni replied. "Furthermore, the 7 independent worlds currently aligned with Earth and the Ferroni in our Mutual Defense Pact have authorized me to express their similar interest." The chamber erupted in excited discussion. The addition of the Ferroni and 7 independent worlds would represent the largest expansion of council membership in centuries. Keller allowed herself a small smile before raising her voice again. "Distinguished representatives, the choice before you is clear. The old approach has led to repeated cycles of aggression and capitulation. Earth offers an alternative, a doctrine of clear boundaries, united response, and protective strength. We do not seek to dominate this council, but neither will we allow ourselves or our allies to be victimized by those who mistake diplomacy for weakness." She looked directly at the Drekmar representative. "Let me be perfectly clear. Earth does not seek conflict. We did not initiate the Proxima Centauri crisis, but we ended it, decisively and without bloodshed. That is the essence of the doctrine before you today." The council leader raised an appendage for silence. "The council will need time to consider this proposal. Such a fundamental shift in security policy cannot be decided hastily." "Of course," Keller agreed. "Earth understands the need for careful deliberation. However, I must note that regardless of the council's decision, Earth will continue to adhere to these principles in our own defense and in the defense of our allies." "Is that a threat, Ambassador?" asked a representative from a species known for their close ties to the Drekmar. Keller smiled. "Not at all. It's a promise. A promise that those who respect the rights and sovereignty of others have nothing to fear from humanity. But for those who would threaten our people or our friends," her smile faded, "for them, it is simply a warning that humans don't negotiate with terrorists, whether they come from Earth or from the stars." In a quiet corner of the station's diplomatic lounge, hours after the council session had adjourned, Ambassador Keller sat with Dr. Barnes and Lieutenant Commander Dover, watching the stars through a panoramic viewport. "Well," Dover said, raising a glass of amber liquid, "to making the galaxy a more interesting place?" Barnes laughed, clinking her own glass against his. "Is that what we're calling it now?" "What would you call it?" Dover asked. The xenoanthropologist considered this for a moment. "Growing pains, perhaps. The council has existed for millennia with minimal change. Humanity has existed among the stars for less than a century, and we've already disrupted the established order." "Some things needed disrupting," Keller said quietly, her eyes on the distant stars. "The Drekmar weren't the only predators taking advantage of the council's passivity. Reports are coming in from across the galaxy of similar groups suddenly pulling back, reassessing their strategies." "Fear of the humans?" Dover asked, a hint of pride in his voice. "Fear of consequences," Barnes corrected. "Something that's been sorely lacking in interstellar relations. The Council's approach created a perfect breeding ground for entities like the Drekmar, all the benefits of civilization with none of the responsibilities." Keller nodded slowly. "The Council vote is scheduled for next week. Our analysts predict it will pass, though with significant modifications." "Will you accept the modifications?" Dover asked. "Depends on what they are," Keller replied. "The core principle is non-negotiable. We will not reward aggression. Everything else," she made a balancing gesture with her hand, "is diplomatic territory." The lounge door slid open, and Admiral Wells entered, still in her formal uniform from the council presentation. She spotted the group and made her way over, dropping into an empty chair with a sigh that spoke volumes about the day she'd had. "Counselors," she said by way of greeting, I've just come from a rather interesting meeting with the Moravian military attaché. Dover raised an eyebrow. The Moravians actually have a military? I thought they were pure diplomats. Every species has defenses, Wells replied, accepting a drink from Barnes. Though the Moravians haven't had to use theirs in several millennia. That's partly why they were so shocked by our approach to the Drekmar. And what did the attaché want? Keller asked. Wells smiled, a rare, genuine expression rather than her usual tactical one. Training. They want to know how we executed the Ghost Protocol. Specifically how we penetrated Drekmar cybersecurity so completely without setting foot on their vessels. Dover nearly choked on his drink. They what? I thought we were the dangerous warmongers disrupting galactic peace. Apparently, Wells said dryly, we're dangerous warmongers with skills worth learning. Barnes set down her glass. It's starting, isn't it? The shift we predicted? Keller nodded. The Council races are beginning to realize that their policy of appeasement hasn't made them safer. It's just taught the predators which species are easy targets. And now, Wells added, they're wondering if perhaps humanity's approach might be worth adopting. Not publicly, of course. They'll still debate and condemn and wring their appendages in the Council chamber. But privately, they're reassessing. A comfortable silence fell over the group as they contemplated the stars beyond the viewport. Each pinpoint of light represented worlds and species, histories and futures, all interconnected in the vast, complex web of galactic politics. I spoke with Governor Winters this morning, Wells finally said. New Seattle's population has increased by 15% since the incident. They've got a waiting list of colonists wanting to settle there. After a hostage crisis? Dover asked, surprised. I'd have expected the opposite. Humans are strange that way, Barnes mused. We're drawn to places where something meaningful happened, even, perhaps especially, if that something was difficult or dangerous. It's more practical than that, Wells replied. They know that New Seattle is now the most heavily defended human colony. They know that Earth demonstrated it will go to extraordinary lengths to protect its people. In a galaxy full of uncertainties, that's more valuable than gold. Keller's communication device chimed. She checked it quickly, her expression shifting to one of surprise. Well, this is unexpected, she said. The Drekmar Collective has requested a direct meeting. No council mediators. A trap? Dover suggested immediately. Unlikely, Barnes replied before Keller could speak. The Drekmar are pragmatists above all. They tested us, we responded decisively, and now they're reassessing. This is consistent with their cultural patterns. What do they want? Wells asked. Keller scrolled through the message. They're proposing a formal non-aggression pact between Earth and the Collective. They also... She paused, reading more carefully. They're offering information about other potential threats to human colonies. Buying our goodwill, Wells said, unimpressed. Or recognizing that the galaxy is changing, Barnes countered. The Drekmar didn't become a successful raiding species by being slow to adapt. They see which way the solar wind is blowing. Dover snorted. So after trying to extort us, they now want to be friends? Not friends, Keller corrected. Business partners, in a sense. They're acknowledging our strength and offering terms that benefit both sides. It's actually quite rational from their perspective. The question is, Wells said, leaning forward, what's rational from ours? The four humans exchanged glances, each considering the implications. 6 months ago, the Drekmar had been an enemy, taking human hostages and demanding concessions. Now they were offering alliance. The galaxy was indeed changing, and faster than anyone had anticipated. We hear them out, Keller finally decided. We set clear terms. We verify everything twice. And we make absolutely certain they understand that any violation will be met with the full force of human response. They'll test the boundaries, Wells warned. Of course they will, Keller agreed. That's what predators do, but now they'll do it cautiously, knowing the potential cost. Dover raised his glass again. To humanity's place among the stars, complicated, controversial, and apparently completely terrifying to pirates everywhere. Laughter rippled through the group as they clinked glasses. Outside the viewport, the endless expanse of stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the political machinations of the species that traveled between them. Yet somewhere out there, word was spreading across the vastness of space. Humans had arrived on the galactic stage, and they'd brought with them an ancient principle from their homeworld. They didn't negotiate with terrorists. Not now, not ever. And somehow, against all council predictions, that simple, stubborn stance was beginning to create a safer galaxy for everyone. 5 years later, Ambassador Keller stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Galactic Security Headquarters, orbiting a neutral star system. The massive structure, a collaboration between 12 species including humans, Pharaoni, and surprisingly the Drekmar, represented the most significant reform in Council history. "Quite a view, isn't it?" said a familiar voice. Keller turned to see the Parvian delegate approaching, his scales now bearing the gold-tinged edges of greater seniority. "It is," she agreed. "Did you ever imagine we'd be standing here when we first met?" The Parvian made a gesture that Keller had learned was their equivalent of a rueful smile. "I believe my exact assessment at the time was that humans would either destroy the Council or transform it utterly." "And which was it in the end?" "Both, perhaps," the Parvian replied. "The old Council with its endless debates and symbolic gestures has indeed been destroyed. What has risen in its place," he gestured at the headquarters around them, "is something none of us could have predicted." Keller nodded, turning back to the viewport. Below them, ships from 24 species maneuvered in precise formations, joint training exercises for the newly formed Galactic Security Force. The idea that had begun with Earth's defiance of Council protocols had evolved into a comprehensive security architecture that even the most skeptical Council races had eventually embraced. "The Drekmar Fleet Commander arrives tomorrow," the Parvian noted. "Their contribution of 30 warships to the GSF is significant." "From pirates to peacekeepers in 5 years," Keller mused. "I'm still not entirely convinced." "They're being watched closely," the Parvian assured her. "But their knowledge of raider tactics has already proven invaluable in dismantling 3 separate criminal organizations operating in the Outer Rim. Even your Admiral Wells has expressed grudging approval." A comfortable silence fell between them, a far cry from the tense exchanges of years past. "You know," the Parvian said eventually, "there's an old saying among my people. The strongest current changes the course of the river. When your species joined the galactic community, many feared you would be swept away by the current of established politics. Instead, we became the current," Keller finished. "Precisely." The Parvian scales rippled in a pattern Keller now recognized as respect. The Council had grown complacent, comfortable with symbolic action rather than substantive change. Humanity reminded us that peace requires more than good intentions. It requires the will to defend it. In the distance, a Pharaoni diplomatic vessel glided into dock, its crystalline hull catching the light of the system's sun. The Pharaoni, once the most reclusive of spacefaring species, had become Earth's closest allies and now held the Council leadership, a position they'd accepted only after the reforms championed by humanity had been fully implemented. "There are still those who fear you," the Parvian said quietly. "Species who whisper that humans will not be content until the galaxy bends to your will." Keller smiled. "And what do you tell them?" "I tell them to study your history more carefully. Humans fought countless wars among yourselves, yet you never sought to eradicate your enemies completely. Even at the height of your global conflicts, you created rules of warfare, established protections for civilians, developed the concept of proportional response." The Parvian turned to face her directly. "Most importantly, I tell them that humans understand something many older species have forgotten. That true security comes not from dominance, but from justice. Your Terran security doctrine wasn't about making humanity the supreme power in the galaxy. It was about creating a system where no species needs to fear extortion or terror." "And now that system exists," Keller said, gesturing to the headquarters around them. "Because you refuse to negotiate with terrorists," the Parvian agreed. "A simple principle that changed the course of galactic history." Keller's communication device chimed. Admiral Wells requesting her presence at the command center. "Some things never changed." "Duty calls," she said, straightening her diplomatic uniform. The Parvian made a gesture of understanding. "Before you go, Ambassador, there is one question that has puzzled many of us over the years." "Oh?" "Your species had the technological capability to simply destroy the Drekmar fleet at Proxima Centauri. Your Ghost Protocol could have vented all atmosphere or overloaded their power cores, yet you chose the more difficult path of taking control without casualties. Why?" Keller paused, considering the question carefully. "Because the goal was never destruction. The goal was to send a message, not just to the Drekmar, but to the galaxy at large." "And what message was that?" "That humans value life, all life, even our enemies. That we will defend ourselves with absolute resolve, but we will not descend into needless cruelty. That we understand the difference between winning a battle and building a peace." She smiled slightly. "In short, that were dangerous when threatened, but were far more valuable as allies. The Parvian's scales shifted to the deep purple of profound understanding, a lesson the Council needed to learn. A lesson we all continue to learn, Keller corrected gently. Even humanity. As she walked toward the command center, Keller reflected on the long, strange journey from that first confrontation with the Drekmar to this moment. The path had not been smooth. There had been setbacks and challenges, moments when the fragile coalition she'd helped build seemed ready to fracture. But through it all, Earth had held firm to its principles. No negotiation with those who use terror as a weapon. No concessions under threat. No abandonment of allies when difficulties arose. And somehow, against all odds, that stubborn human stance had created something new in a galaxy billions of years old. A community of species united not by fear of reprisal or political expediency, but by shared commitment to a simple idea, that some lines should never be crossed, that some principles were worth fighting for, and that true peace came not from submission, but from the courage to stand for what was right. It was, Keller thought with a smile, perhaps the most human contribution possible to a galaxy full of stars. The end. They did what? Admiral Thompson slammed her fist on the polished conference table, rattling the holographic projectors and causing several diplomatic aides to flinch. The Terran diplomatic envoy, Dr. Elias Wright, adjusted his glasses nervously. The Vraxian hegemony has... well, there's no diplomatic way to put this. They've eliminated the Centauri colony. All of it. 3 million people. Gone. Define eliminated, growled General Martinez, though from the tightening of his jaw it was clear he already knew. Orbital bombardment followed by atmospheric ignition, Wright replied, his voice clinically detached in the way people sound when they're trying not to scream. Their justification was that the colony violated Vraxian territorial claims from the Treaty of Sirius, which, and I cannot stress this enough, was never ratified by any human government. A heavy silence fell over the United Earth Defense Council chamber. Outside the reinforced windows of the lunar facility, Earth hung like a blue marble in the void, beautiful, fragile, and suddenly seeming much more vulnerable than it had 24 hours ago. Admiral Thompson's voice was dangerously quiet when she finally spoke. So the Vraxians just committed genocide because of a border dispute over a treaty we never even signed? That's accurate, yes. And the Galactic Council. What's their response? Dr. Wright's bitter laugh contained not a trace of humor. A strongly worded condemnation and economic sanctions to be reviewed in 60 standard cycles. Sanctions. General Martinez spat the word like it was poison. For the murder of 3 million people. The president of the United Earth Alliance, Dr. Nora Kim, who had been silently observing until now, finally spoke. Her voice was measured, but her eyes betrayed a cold fury that made everyone in the room straighten their posture. Dr. Wright, please remind me, how long have we been attempting diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council? 73 years, Madam President. And in those 73 years, how many times have we been denied full membership status? 17 times, ma'am. On what grounds most recently? Wright consulted his tablet. Quote, Earth's propensity for aggressive military development makes their civilization unsuitable for inclusion in galactic governance at this time. End quote. President Kim nodded slowly, then looked around the table. Ladies and gentlemen, it appears we've been approaching this all wrong. For nearly a century, humanity has tried to be civilized. We've tried to play by their rules. We've demilitarized. We've shared technology. We've compromised. She stood up, and despite her small stature, seemed to fill the room. Not anymore. First Sentinel Graxthul of the Vraxian hegemony was enjoying his triumph. The obliteration of the human colony had been efficiently executed, and the resulting diplomatic furor was exactly what the Imperial Court had anticipated. All squawk and no bite. These humans, he chittered to his second Sentinel, Vexmore, as they observed the tactical display aboard the dreadnought Inevitable Dominion. They are so predictable. Already they send diplomatic communiques. Already they beg for meetings. Vexmore flicked his sensory appendages in the Vraxian equivalent of a smirk. The Galactic Council has assured us that there will be no serious consequences. The humans have no allies of significance. Indeed, their pleas will make fine entertainment at the Emperor's feast. Graxthul settled his carapace into the command chair. What is the status of the human delegation? They have requested permission to dock within the hour, First Sentinel. Permit it. I shall enjoy watching them grovel. When the human shuttle docked with the inevitable Dominion, Graxathul was mildly surprised to see only a single human emerge. A middle-aged woman with graying hair and an unremarkable gray uniform devoid of insignia or decoration. "First Sentinel," the ship's communication officer interrupted. "The human vessel is departing." Graxathul's mandibles clicked in amusement. They send one diplomat and immediately retreat? Their cowardice exceeds even my expectations. The lone human was escorted to the command deck by 4 armed guards, though such precautions seemed almost comically unnecessary for the unimposing figure. "I am First Sentinel Graxathul of the glorious Vraxian hegemony," he announced as the human was brought before him. "You may prostrate yourself and begin your pitiful appeals for mercy." The woman looked around the command deck with mild interest, as if touring a museum exhibit rather than standing in the heart of the warship that had just annihilated millions of her kind. "No prostration today, I'm afraid," she said conversationally. "I'm Dr. Olivia Ford. I'm not a diplomat." Graxathul's compound eyes narrowed. "Then why are you here, human?" Dr. Ford checked her watch, an archaic gesture that seemed absurdly out of place in the advanced alien warship. "Mostly to buy time, if I'm being completely honest." "Time?" Vexmore stepped forward, irritated. "Time for what?" "For the nanites I just released into your ship's atmospheric system to finish their work." She smiled pleasantly. "They should be about done now." A sudden alarm blared across the command deck. The tactical officer frantically manipulated controls with his appendages. "First Sentinel, the ship's systems are failing. Weapons, shields, propulsion, all systems are showing catastrophic failures." Graxathul rose to his full height, towering over the human. "What have you done?" "Like I said, I'm not a diplomat." Dr. Ford's smile remained fixed and pleasant. "I'm an engineer. Specifically, I designed the nanite disassemblers that are currently converting your ship's critical systems into inert matter. Don't worry, life support will remain functional. We're not monsters." The First Sentinel lunged for her, but stopped short as the ship's gravity abruptly failed, sending crew members floating in all directions. Only the human seemed prepared, her magnetic boots keeping her firmly planted on the deck. "Oh, I should mention," Dr. Ford continued as if discussing the weather, "similar devices were just delivered to every Vraxian military vessel in this sector, plus your orbital defense platforms, and your planetary defense grid." The command deck had descended into chaos, but Graxathul managed to stabilize himself against a console. "Impossible! Our defenses are impenetrable! The Galactic Council will—" "The Galactic Council," Dr. Ford interrupted, "will do exactly what they always do. Nothing of consequence. They'll issue strongly worded condemnations. They might even impose sanctions." Her smile finally faded. "We counted on that." A new alarm sounded, and the main view screen activated automatically. It showed hundreds, no, thousands of small objects emerging from hyperspace around the Vraxian homeworld. "What you're seeing," Dr. Ford explained helpfully, "is approximately 12,000 Artemis-class autonomous strike platforms. Human technology. The same technology your friends at the Galactic Council kept calling too aggressive to qualify us for membership." She checked her watch again. "In about 6 minutes, they'll be in position to reduce every military and government installation on your planet to atoms, while leaving civilian infrastructure intact. Unlike you, we don't believe in collective punishment." Graxathul's mandibles trembled in a mix of rage and dawning horror. "This is an act of war!" "No," Dr. Ford corrected mildly. "This is a response to an act of war. You already fired the first shot. We're just demonstrating why that was a monumentally stupid decision." Back on Earth, the Defense Council watched the live feed from Dr. Ford's body camera. The Vraxian command deck was in disarray, with officers floating helplessly in zero gravity while emergency lights flashed. "Phase 1 complete," announced General Martinez. "All Vraxian military assets have been neutralized. Artemis platforms are in final approach positions." President Kim nodded. "And the Galactic Council?" Admiral Thompson gestured to a separate display. "As predicted, they've called an emergency session. They're demanding we stand down immediately." "Of course they are." The president's smile held no warmth. "Dr. Wright, please deliver our response to the council." The diplomatic envoy looked up from his tablet. "Ma'am, are you sure about this? The language is rather direct." "That's rather the point, Doctor. Proceed as instructed." Wright nodded and began the transmission to the Galactic Council's chambers, where representatives of 37 spacefaring civilizations had gathered in emergency session. The holographic image of Dr. Wright appeared in the center of the council chamber, the chair being a gaseous entity contained within an elaborate life support apparatus, addressed him immediately. Representative Wright, the Council demands that Earth recall its military forces from Vraxian space immediately. This aggressive action threatens the stability of the entire quadrant. Wright adjusted his glasses, a gesture that had become his trademark in diplomatic circles. Chair being Zolon, honored council members, I come before you not to debate, but to inform. Humanity has, for 73 years, attempted to join your community of civilizations. We have abided by your regulations. We have respected your boundaries. We have followed your guidelines for developing species. He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the chamber. And in return, you have repeatedly denied us membership. You have restricted our expansion. You have dismissed our security concerns. And when 3 million of our people were exterminated, you responded with sanctions. The chamber erupted in overlapping protests and objections. Wright waited patiently for the chair being to restore order. What occurred was a tragedy, the chair being conceded, but your response is disproportionate and violates council protocols for— With respect, chair being, Wright interrupted. We no longer recognize council authority in matters concerning human security. The United Earth Alliance has unanimously enacted the following policy, effective immediately. He read from his tablet. 1. Earth is withdrawing its application for Galactic Council membership. 2. Any act of aggression against human settlements, vessels, or interests will be met with immediate and overwhelming military response. 3. Earth space, including all current colonies and outposts, is hereby declared sovereign territory. Any unauthorized entry will be considered a hostile act. 4. Earth will continue peaceful trade and cultural exchange with all willing civilizations, independent of council oversight. 5. The Vraxian hegemony has 24 hours to surrender those responsible for the Centauri genocide and agree to substantial reparations. Failure to comply will result in the complete dismantling of their military capability and governmental infrastructure. The council chamber had fallen into stunned silence. This isn't a negotiation, Wright concluded. This is humanity informing you of how things will be from now on. We tried being civilized, not anymore. The transmission ended, leaving the council in an uproar. On the Vraxian command deck, Dr. Ford was calmly drinking coffee from a thermos she'd produced from her pocket. First Sentinel Graxthul and his officers remained suspended in zero gravity, held in place by emergency restraints that had automatically deployed from the walls. You know, Ford remarked conversationally, the funny thing about humans is that we're really quite peaceful by nature. Contrary to what the council likes to say about us, we'd much rather trade than fight. Build rather than destroy. She took another sip of coffee. But we've also got this unfortunate trait where if you harm one of us, we tend to take it rather personally. And if you harm 3 million of us— She whistled softly. Well, that's the kind of thing that unites our entire species in ways nothing else quite manages to do. Graxthul had regained some of his composure. The other powers will not stand for this. The Andorian Collective, the Trill Consortium. They will rally to our defense. Ford laughed, a genuine sound of amusement that echoed oddly in the disabled command center. No, they won't. We've already received back-channel communications from 17 council species expressing their, let's call it, discreet approval of our actions. Turns out you Vraxians haven't exactly been winning popularity contests out here. Her communicator beeped. She checked it and nodded. Ah, right on schedule. Your Emperor is about to address your people. You might want to watch this. The main view screen flickered to life again, showing the ornate throne room of the Vraxian Imperial Palace. The Emperor, his elaborate carapace adorned with the traditional jewels of office, looked directly into the camera. His voice trembled slightly, an unprecedented display of emotion for a Vraxian ruler. People of the hegemony, it is with grave concern that I address you. Our glorious military has suffered a temporary setback due to human aggression. However, I assure you that— The Emperor's words cut off as the floor beneath his throne suddenly opened, revealing it to be an elaborate trapdoor. The ruler of the Vraxian people disappeared with an undignified shriek. The camera panned to show a human standing calmly where the Emperor had been, wearing the same nondescript gray uniform as Dr. Ford. Hello, Vraxian citizens, the human said pleasantly. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Way, representing the United Earth Alliance. Your Emperor is unharmed, just indisposed at the moment. This broadcast is going out to every Vraxian on your homeworld and colonies. Way gestured, and the view screen split to show images of the disabled Vraxian fleet, alongside the massive array of human weapons platforms now surrounding the planet. As you can see, your military has been neutralized without a single casualty. We could have chosen annihilation, as your leaders chose for our Centauri colony. But that's not how humanity operates. Instead, we're offering terms. He held up a tablet similar to the one Dr. Wright had used at the council. 1. Those directly responsible for the Centauri genocide will be surrendered for trial under human justice. 2. The Vraxian hegemony will pay reparations to the families of the victims. 3. All claimed territories under the Invalid Treaty of Sirius will be relinquished. 4. A human oversight commission will monitor Vraxian military activities for the next 50 years. 5. The current imperial government will be dissolved and replaced with the democratic system your reformists have been advocating for the past 3 decades. Wei paused, letting the terms sink in. You have 24 hours to accept these conditions. If you refuse... He smiled thinly. Well, Dr. Ford is currently demonstrating to your military leadership exactly what happens in that scenario. The broadcast ended, returning to the view of the command deck, where Graxthel was still processing what he'd just witnessed. You infiltrated the Imperial Palace? He finally managed. Impossible. The security was designed to detect weapons and known threats, Ford finished for him. Not specialized nanite delivery systems disguised as diplomatic gifts. We've had those in place for years, ever since you started making threatening noises about our expansion into what you called contested space. She checked her watch again. Oh, and if you're wondering about your planetary communication blackout, that's also us. Only broadcasts we approve are getting through right now. Panic wouldn't help anyone, would it? First Sentinel Graxthul's compound eyes narrowed to slits. You have planned this for years. Contingency planning, Ford corrected. We never wanted to use it. You forced our hand when you murdered 3 million innocent people. Her pleasant demeanor slipped for the first time, revealing a flash of the cold fury that united her species. That was your mistake, First Sentinel. Not underestimating our technology, not underestimating our military capacity. Your mistake was thinking that humanity would respond to genocide with diplomacy. The following 24 hours were the tensest in recent human history. On Earth and its colonies, citizens watched news feeds obsessively. Military installations remained at highest alert. The Galactic Council continued to issue increasingly desperate calls for restraint, all of which went unanswered. In the war room beneath Lunar Base Alpha, President Kim and her council monitored the situation. The holographic display showed the positions of Earth forces throughout the Vraxian system, alongside real-time intelligence feeds. 17 hours remaining, announced Admiral Thompson. No official response yet from the Vraxian leadership. General Martinez nodded. But our intelligence networks report increasing pressure from the Vraxian public. It seems the common citizens aren't as eager for martyrdom as their leaders might have hoped. Dr. Wright looked up from his console. Madam President, we're receiving multiple requests for private channels from Council species. The Andorians, the Trill, the Proxima Collective, even the Dorvan Imperium. President Kim raised an eyebrow. The Dorvans? They've refused to acknowledge our existence for 40 years. Apparently, they're suddenly very interested in diplomatic relations. Wright replied dryly. All of them are offering to mediate the conflict. How generous of them. The president's voice dripped with sarcasm. Inform them that Earth appreciates their sudden concern, but will handle this matter directly. However, we would be open to discussing new bilateral relationships after the current situation is resolved. Yes, Madam President. Admiral Thompson cleared her throat. Ma'am, there's something else you should see. We're detecting unusual activity around the Galactic Council headquarters. The holographic display shifted to show the massive space station that served as the Council's neutral territory. Dozens of military vessels were taking up positions around it. Those aren't Vraxian ships, General Martinez observed. Those are Council peacekeeping forces, the largest deployment we've ever seen. President Kim studied the display. They wouldn't dare intervene militarily, not after we demonstrated our capabilities. I don't think they're preparing to fight, Wright said slowly. I think they're preparing to evacuate. The council members, their staffs, their records. They're getting ready to relocate the entire galactic governance structure. They're afraid, Thompson realized. Not just of what we're doing to the Vraxians. They're afraid of what this means for the power balance they've maintained for centuries. President Kim's expression hardened. Good. Fear might accomplish what reason and diplomacy couldn't. With 6 hours remaining in the ultimatum, Dr. Ford was escorted from the inevitable dominion. to a secure communication room in the Vraxian government complex. The mood among her Vraxian guards was subdued. Word of the situation had spread despite the communication blackout, and the once proud warriors now moved with the cautious deference of those who understood their precarious position. In the communication room, she found herself face to face with the Vraxian War Council. 7 high-ranking officials whose chitinous faces were unreadable to human eyes but whose body language suggested a mix of rage, fear, and resignation. "Dr. Ford," began the eldest member, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into flat, unaccented English. "I am Supreme Commander Thaxel. We have been authorized to negotiate terms." Ford raised an eyebrow. "There's nothing to negotiate. You've been presented with conditions, not a starting point for bargaining." "Surely there can be some accommodation," insisted another council member. "The reparations demanded would cripple our economy for generations, and the dissolution of our government was a non-negotiable condition," Ford interrupted. "Your emperor ordered the deaths of 3 million humans. Your military carried it out. Your government celebrated it. All 3 have forfeited their right to exist." She checked her ever-present watch. 5 hours and 47 minutes remaining. "Do you accept the terms, or shall I return to my ship and prepare for Phase 2? The council members exchanged glances, communicating in their native language too quickly for the translators to keep up. "We require guarantees," Thaxel finally said. "Guarantees that our people will not be subject to human retaliation once we are defenseless." "Unlike you," Ford replied coldly. "We don't target civilians, ever. But if it helps you save face with your people, I'm authorized to add a formal non-aggression clause to the terms, guaranteeing the physical safety of all Vraxian civilians, provided the other conditions are met." More rapid chittering among the council. Then, with visible reluctance, Thaxel produced what appeared to be an ornate crystalline device. "This is the Imperial Seal," he explained. "With it, I can authorize the surrender on behalf of the hegemony. The terms are accepted." Ford nodded, her expression giving away nothing. "A wise decision. The first shipment of disassembler nanites will be deactivated immediately as a gesture of good faith. The rest will follow as each condition is fulfilled, beginning with the surrender of those responsible for the Centauri genocide." "And what of First Sentinel Graxthal?" asked one of the younger council members. "He claims he was merely following orders." "The following orders defense was rejected by our legal system centuries ago," Ford replied. "But he will receive a fair trial, as will all those involved. Justice, not vengeance. That's the human way." She stood to leave, then paused at the door. "One more thing. When your history records this moment, remember, we could have done to your people what you did to ours. We chose not to. That's the difference between us. That's why we're going to win not just this confrontation, but every one that follows. Not because our weapons are superior, though they are, but because our restraint is." 3 weeks later, President Kim addressed the United Earth Alliance from the restored colony on Centauri. Behind her, construction drones were already rebuilding what had been destroyed. The memorial, 3 million lights embedded in a mountain of black granite, glowed softly in the background. "Citizens of Earth and her colonies," she began, her voice carrying to every human settlement across the stars. "Today marks a new chapter in our history. The Vraxian hegemony has fulfilled the first of our conditions, surrendering those responsible for the atrocity committed here. The transition to their new democratic government has begun, overseen by our allies among the Vraxian reformists, those who opposed the imperial regime for generations but were silenced until now." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "Some have called our actions extreme. Some have suggested we have destabilized the delicate balance of galactic politics. To them, I say, you're absolutely right." There was a murmur of surprise from the assembled crowd. "The balance was already unstable," she continued. "It was maintained through the subjugation of emerging species like our own. It permitted genocide as a political tool. It favored ancient powers over new ideas. Such a balance deserved to be disrupted." The president gestured to the construction behind her. "We will rebuild here, not just structures but hope, and we will extend that hope throughout the galaxy. 14 former council species have already signed bilateral treaties with Earth, recognizing our sovereignty and right to self-defense. The Galactic Council itself has extended an unconditional offer of full membership, which we have respectfully declined." She smiled slightly. "We have no interest in joining a club that would condone the murder of our people. Instead, we are establishing something new, the Interstellar Cooperative, founded on principles of genuine equality, mutual defense, and collective progress. Already, 22 civilizations have expressed interest in joining, including, ironically, the newly democratic Vraxian Republic. The president's expression grew solemn again. None of this brings back those we lost. Nothing can. But their sacrifice has not been in vain. They have bought, with their lives, a new future for humanity. One where we are not supplicants in the galactic community but equal partners, perhaps in time even leaders. She gestured to the memorial lights behind her. We will remember them. We will honor them. And we will never again allow anyone to believe that humanity can be targeted with impunity. President Kim stepped away from the podium to thunderous applause. As she did, her communications officer approached with an urgent message. Madam President, the officer whispered. We've just received a priority communication from the Dorvan Imperium. They're requesting emergency assistance. The president frowned. The Dorvans? What kind of assistance? Military aid, ma'am. It seems they're under attack from a species previously unknown to us, something called the Thalcree Dominion. The Dorvans say they've already lost 3 outposts. And they're coming to us for help? The species they wouldn't even acknowledge until 3 weeks ago? Yes, ma'am. Their message says, and I quote, "We recognize that humanity understands the true meaning of strength, not just the ability to destroy, but the wisdom to know when not to." President Kim was silent for a long moment, considering the implications. Then she nodded decisively. Inform the Dorvans that humanity will respond to their request. Not because we owe them anything, but because that's who we are. We protect the innocent, whether they're human or not. She paused. And tell Admiral Thompson to prepare a diplomatic mission, accompanied by the Second Fleet. Let's introduce ourselves to these Thalcree properly. Yes, Madam President. As Kim walked away from the memorial, she murmured softly to the 3 million lights. We tried being civilized. Turns out we still are, just on our own terms now. In the depths of space, beyond the borders of known civilization, a Thalcree warship captured its latest prize. A small Dorvan science vessel. The Thalcree commander, a hulking figure of chitin and metal implants, loomed over the terrified Dorvan captain. Your territory is forfeit, the commander rasped through his translator. The Dominion expands. It is inevitable. The Dorvan captain, though frightened, managed a small, unexpected smile. You should have done your research before attacking us. Research? The Thalcree commander laughed, a harsh, mechanical sound. What knowledge could possibly save you now? Not knowledge about us, the Dorvan replied. Knowledge about our new allies. They have a saying you might want to remember. We tried being civilized, not anymore. Before the Thalcree commander could respond, a proximity alarm blared. On the view screen, hyperspace ruptures were forming. Dozens, then hundreds of them, surrounding the Thalcree vessel. The commander stared in disbelief as ships emerged from the ruptures. Sleek, deadly-looking vessels unlike any he had encountered before. And at their center, a massive flagship bearing an unfamiliar emblem. A blue and green planet partially encircled by stars. Attention, Thalcree vessel, came a calm, almost conversational human voice over the communication system. This is Admiral Lynn Thompson of the United Earth Alliance. You are currently holding citizens of our ally, the Dorvan Imperium. We request their immediate release and your unconditional surrender. The Thalcree commander bristled. The Dominion surrenders to no one. Who are you to make such demands? There was a brief pause, then a chuckle that somehow conveyed more menace than any threat could have. We're humanity, Admiral Thompson replied simply. Perhaps you've heard of us. If not, well, you're about to. 6 months later. I still can't believe we're sitting in the same room with Vraxians and not trying to kill each other, Lieutenant Zhang whispered to Dr. Ford, as they waited for the first official session of the Interstellar Cooperative to begin. The Grand Chamber, constructed in neutral space near the former Centauri colony, now rebuilt and renamed New Horizon, housed representatives from 37 spacefaring civilizations. Most notable were the Vraxian delegates, no longer the chittering, aggressive warriors of the hegemony, but thoughtful diplomats selected by their new democratic assembly. Speak for yourself, Ford replied with a wry smile. I've got 3 disassembler nanites in my pocket, just in case. Zhang's eyes widened. You're joking, right? Mostly. Ford's attention shifted to the main platform, where Admiral Thompson was preparing to address the gathering. Though I notice you've still got that particle disruption module strapped to your ankle. Standard issue now, Zhang muttered. Thompson's orders. Peace through strength and all that. Admiral Thompson stepped to the podium, resplendent in the new diplomatic uniform of the United Earth Alliance, charcoal gray with subtle blue piping, deliberately understated compared to the ostentatious regalia favored by many of the other species present. Distinguished representatives, she began, her voice carrying effortlessly through the chamber's perfect acoustics. I welcome you to the inaugural convocation of the Interstellar Cooperative. 6 months ago, few would have predicted this moment, least of all myself. A ripple of what passed for laughter among the various species swept through the chamber. We gather here not as conquerors and conquered, nor as supplicants and benefactors, but as equals united by common purpose, to ensure that what happened at Centauri never happens again, to any of us. From her position in the Earth delegation, Dr. Ford watched the Vraxian representatives. Their body language had changed dramatically since the transition, less rigid, more open. The radical reformist Zexal, now their lead diplomat, actually nodded in agreement with Thompson's words. The cooperative is founded on 3 principles, Thompson continued. First, absolute respect for territorial sovereignty, with disputes to be resolved by unanimous consent of uninvolved parties. Second, mutual defense against external threats, with an attack on one considered an attack on all. And third, unrestricted scientific and cultural exchange, that we might grow together rather than apart. The chamber erupted in multilingual approval, a cacophony of clicks, whistles, rumbles, and words that somehow blended into a harmonious expression of assent. As the applause died down, a commotion at the chamber's entrance drew everyone's attention. A delegation not on the official roster had arrived. Tall, imposing figures with gleaming exoskeletons and cybernetic enhancements visible even from a distance. Thalkri, Zhang breathed. What are they doing here? The Thalkri delegation moved purposefully toward the central floor, ignoring the startled reactions of the other representatives. Their leader, distinguishable by the elaborate implants that encased most of his natural form, stopped directly before the Earth delegation. I am Supreme Archon Vexkrath of the Thalkri Dominion, he announced, his mechanically enhanced voice projecting throughout the chamber without need of amplification. We have come to issue a formal statement to this assembly. Admiral Thompson remained impassive at the podium. The cooperative welcomes observers from all spacefaring civilizations, Supreme Archon. You may address the gathering. The Thalkri leader turned slowly, surveying the chamber with glowing cybernetic eyes. The Dominion has observed your recent reorganization of galactic affairs with great interest. We have studied the human response to Vraxian aggression. We have analyzed your technologies, your tactics, your diplomatic initiatives. He paused, the tension in the room becoming almost palpable. And we have decided that the Thalkri Dominion wishes to join your cooperative. A stunned silence fell, broken only by the soft chittering of surprised Vraxians. That's unexpected, Thompson replied carefully. Given your recent aggression against Dorvan territories, we had anticipated a different sort of exchange. The Dominion adapts, Vexkrath stated simply. We miscalculated. We observed the Galactic Council's ineffectiveness. We assumed all species equally weak, equally disorganized. We were incorrect. He gestured toward the human delegation with a cybernetic limb. You showed us a better way. Strength without unnecessary destruction. Power used with precision. We wish to learn this. From the Dorvan delegation came an outburst of protest, quickly gavelled to order by Thompson. The application of the Thalkri Dominion will be considered according to cooperative protocols, Thompson announced. This includes full reparations to the Dorvan Imperium and immediate cessation of all hostilities. We will convene a special session to address this matter. As the Thalkri were escorted to observer seating, Dr. Ford leaned over to Zhang. Did you see that coming? Because I definitely did not see that coming. Zhang shook his head. The intelligence briefing suggested they were preparing for all-out war. This is smart, Ford finished for him. They've done exactly what we would have done, assessed the tactical situation, recognized the futility of conflict, and pivoted to a more advantageous position. She chuckled softly. They're learning from us already. Is that a good thing? Depends on what they learn, doesn't it? On the observation deck overlooking the chamber, President Kim watched the proceedings with Dr. Wright at her side. Your assessment, Doctor? She asked quietly. Wright adjusted his ever-present glasses. The cooperative is exceeding our most optimistic projections. Full ratification of the Charter by all 37 founding members. 18 additional applications pending. And now the Thalkri... He shook his head in amazement. We've fundamentally altered the political landscape of the quadrant in half a year. Not without cost, Kim reminded him soberly. 3 million at Centauri, another 8,000 in the Dorvan conflict. A price no one would willingly pay, Wright agreed. But now that it has been paid, we have a responsibility to ensure it wasn't in vain. They watched as Ambassador Zex-Al of the Vraxian Republic took the podium, his once fearsome carapace now adorned with symbols of office selected by popular vote. On behalf of the Vraxian people, the ambassador began, his translator rendering his words with dignified gravity. I formally apologize for the atrocities committed by our former government. No words can undo what was done, but actions may yet forge a new path forward. The ambassador raised one appendage, and a holographic display appeared above the chamber, showing the newly constructed Centauri Memorial on the Vraxian homeworld, an exact replica of the one on New Horizon. This monument stands in our capital as an eternal reminder of where aggression and prejudice ultimately lead. Every Vraxian child will learn this history, not as propaganda, but as truth. We who once sought to dominate now seek only to coexist. President Kim nodded approvingly. They've come further than anyone expected. Fear is a powerful motivator, Wright observed. As is hope, Kim countered. We gave them both. Below, the cooperative session continued, with representatives discussing trade routes, scientific exchanges, and joint defense protocols. The Earth delegation notably spoke less than most, a deliberate strategy to encourage others to take ownership of the new organization. General Martinez reports that the Joint Fleet exercises are proceeding well, Wright noted, consulting his tablet. The Andorian and Trill vessels are fully integrated with our command structure, and even the Vraxian ships are performing above expectations. And the former Council species? Still maintaining their distance, for the most part. The Galactic Council itself has relocated to the far side of the quadrant, and issued several strongly worded condemnations of our disruptive influence. Kim smiled faintly. Strongly worded condemnations. How original of them. They've also begun a significant military buildup, Wright added more seriously. Intelligence suggests they're finally upgrading their defensive technologies, likely in response to our nanite capabilities. Good, Kim said, surprising her diplomatic advisor. The galaxy was stagnant, Doctor. Complacent. Sometimes progress requires a shock to the system. Even if that progress might eventually be used against us? Especially then, the President replied. Humanity doesn't fear worthy adversaries. We fear only indifference to suffering and injustice. If our actions have awakened the old powers from their complacency, so be it. Better an engaged opponent than a dismissive one. Wright considered this. A risky philosophy, but a human one, Kim asserted. We've never advanced more rapidly than when challenged. Why should other species be different? Below, Admiral Thompson was calling for a vote on the Cooperative's first joint scientific initiative, a massive deep space observatory that would allow all member species to explore the universe together. Speaking of advancement, Wright said, changing the subject, the research team has completed its analysis of the Vraxian and Thalkri technologies we've acquired. There are some fascinating applications that complement our own developments. Will this give us an edge if the Council decides to move against us? Without question. But more importantly, it gives the Cooperative an edge. The technological exchange program is already yielding results beyond our projections. Kim nodded thoughtfully. Ensure that all developments are shared equally among the founding members, as per our charter. No hidden advantages, no secret weapons. Even with the Vraxians? After what they did? Especially with them, Kim insisted. The surest way to prevent a return to their imperial ambitions is to bind them so tightly to the Cooperative that separation becomes unthinkable. Their conversation was interrupted by a priority alert on Wright's tablet. His expression darkened as he read the message. Madam President, we've received a transmission from the edge of explored space. One of our long-range scouts has encountered something. Hostile? Unknown. But the preliminary data is concerning. Some sort of artificial structure, massive in scale, moving through space at sublight speed. Another spacefaring species? Wright shook his head. The structure doesn't match any known design principles. The scout commander describes it as more organic than constructed. It's changing shape as it moves, adapting to local space conditions. A living ship of some kind? Perhaps, or something we lack the context to properly categorize. Wright looked up from his tablet. The scout is maintaining distance and observation protocols. No contact has been attempted yet. President Kim was silent for a long moment, watching the proceedings below where the various species of the cooperative were voting unanimously to approve the joint observatory. Have Admiral Thompson briefed immediately after this session, she finally said, and alert the Cooperative Security Council. If this is a first contact situation, we'll handle it according to protocols. If it's something else... She let the thought hang unfinished. A test for the cooperative? Wright suggested. Perhaps? Kim's expression was resolute. Either way, humanity won't face it alone. Not anymore. In the depths of unexplored space, Junior Scout Commander Aisha Reed maintained her vessel at a safe distance from the massive, shifting structure that filled her view screen. The object, if it could be called that, defied conventional description. Parts of it seemed crystalline, refracting the light of distant stars, while others appeared more like living tissue, pulsing with internal energies. Anything new from the sensor analysis, Lieutenant? She asked her science officer. Lieutenant Benjamin Okafor shook his head, his eyes never leaving his console. Nothing definitive, Commander. It's absorbing our standard scanning frequencies. The few readings I am getting are... well, they don't make sense. Elaborate. It's simultaneously registering as organic, mechanical, and... something else. Something our sensors can't categorize. Okafor looked up, his expression troubled. Whatever it is, it's not from around here. Reed nodded thoughtfully. Keep recording. Maintain our position and continue passive observation only. Should we attempt communication? Negative. First contact protocols are clear. We observe, we report, we wait for instructions. Reed tapped her command console, bringing up the secure channel to Earth. Command has acknowledged our discovery. They're convening the Cooperative Security Council. The aliens too? Okafor asked, surprise evident in his voice. All of them, Reed confirmed. This is exactly what the Cooperative was created for, facing the unknown together. As if responding to their conversation, the massive structure suddenly shifted, a portion of its crystalline surface orienting toward their small scout ship. A pulse of energy, not weapon fire but some form of directed scanning beam, washed over their vessel. Commander! Okafor's voice was tense. It's probing us. Intense energy scan, penetrating all our shields. Reed remained calm. Any damage? Negative, but it's downloading our database. I can't stop it. The lieutenant's fingers flew over his console. Wait, it's not just taking, it's giving something back, receiving unknown data stream. The ship's systems flickered, displays momentarily showing incomprehensible symbols before returning to normal. Then, on the main view screen, a message appeared. We have been watching. Your cooperative intrigues us. We will meet. The message lingered for a moment, then dissolved, replaced by a set of coordinates, a location deep in neutral space. Log everything, Reed ordered. Prepare a full data package for Earth Command. As the scout ship moved to depart, the massive structure began to shift again, its entire form seeming to fold in upon itself in ways that defied conventional physics. Within moments, it had disappeared entirely, leaving no trace of its presence save for the data in the scout ship's computers. Lieutenant Okafor stared at the empty space where the object had been. What do you think it was, Commander? Reed considered the question carefully before responding. I think, Lieutenant, that we've just been handed the next chapter in humanity's story. And this time, we're not writing it alone. As the scout ship engaged its FTL drive to return to Earth with its momentous discovery, Reed couldn't help but think about how much had changed in just 6 months. From fighting for recognition to leading an interstellar alliance. From victims of genocide to architects of a new galactic order. Humanity, she murmured to herself. From civilization to something greater. The stars streaked past as the ship accelerated to FTL, carrying news of yet another challenge for a species that had finally found its place among the stars. Not through submission or isolation, but through standing firm on the principles that had guided them from their first tentative steps into space. We tried being civilized. Not anymore. Now we're something better. The end.